Part 37. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzhuan Xianxia. Chapter 361. Sun Suanhua had seen Menghui's ability. He couldn't even tell them apart. But soon, Sun Suanhua rejected this idea. Because Menghui's strength at this time was only the 5th level of qi refining, and his face was completely different. Except for looking a little similar, there was no similarity. When they separated in Yaluo sect, Menghui had already reached the late stage of foundation building, and Sun Suanhua didn't believe that Menghui's realm would fall back. Under such circumstances, Sun Suanhua gave up the idea of going out to see Menghui and planned to wait for Zhu Feng to come back. Thinking of this, Sun Suanhua lay on the recliner and watched Menghui searching in the cave. Not long after, Menghui found nothing and sat on the stone bed in a discouraged manner. Strange, didn't Zhu Feng practice magic here? But yesterday, he clearly used magic power in the pressure on me. Menghui held his chin and thought for a while, and felt that he should leave at this time. But when he rolled down from the stone bed, he suddenly felt a familiar feeling coming from the edge of the stone wall. As her mind went, she moved closer to the wall, looking thoughtful. But in Sun Suanhua's opinion, Menghui's eyes seemed to be staring at him, and he was so scared that he fell off the recliner. Fortunately, the sound inside Sun Suanhua's formation could not be heard at all. At the same time, Sun Suanhua also reacted. He was in the foundation building stage. If this little girl really found out where he was, he would just trap her in this formation. I've been locked up here for so long, I'm really afraid of anyone. I've cultivated to the foundation building stage in vain. After secretly cursing himself, Sun Suanhua got up from the ground, patted his clothes, and returned to the recliner. As soon as he lay down, he heard Menghui muttering to himself, "Why does this stone wall give me such a familiar feeling?" As he said, Menghui tentatively stretched out his delicate right hand towards the stone wall. With Sun Suanhua's ability, even Xianxia couldn't find that there was a big formation here, let alone Menghui. But Menghui had seen the 9 transformations 9 suns formation. As soon as her fingertips touched it, she immediately felt a familiar flow of spiritual power. This is... Menghui's eyes suddenly lit up. She could clearly distinguish that this was the breath of the 9 transformations 9 suns formation, and she couldn't help but be overjoyed. But no matter what, she couldn't think that this was arranged by Sun Suanhua. She thought that Zhu Feng was doing something in this formation. Since she had already thought about leaving, Menghui had nothing to worry about. With the thought, she used the external fire formula. In an instant, a raging flame came out of her body and burned towards the stone wall. Sun Suanhua was shocked. He also had the earth fire in his body, so how could he not recognize that Menghui was the earth fire? Moreover, he could also see that the formula used by Menghui seemed to be much more advanced than what he mastered. My God, are all the people who play with fire in Chuzhu so powerful? Not only does this little girl have earth fire, but she also uses an extraordinary spell. How could he know that Menghui used the fusion of 2 spells to enhance the power of the earth fire? Sun Suanhua stared at Menghui burning the earth fire on the 9 transformations 9 suns formation, and then he reacted. He thought for a moment, and instead of destroying the formation, it would be better to capture her into the formation and lock her up here. Even if Xianxia came, he would not be able to find out, and he would think that the little girl left by herself. This is the best solution at present. Sun Suanhua was also decisive. Once he made a decision, he would no longer hesitate. He recited the formation spell, raised his hand casually, and the 9 transformations 9 suns formation opened its gate, and generated an extremely strong suction force. Menghui was burning the formation wall with all his strength, but he never thought that the formation would open by itself. She was not careful and fell into the formation with flames all over her body. Sun Suanhua pinched out a talisman and slapped it on Mengwei. At the same time, he controlled the array gate to close again, which was equivalent to directly locking Mengwei here. Little girl, tell me what is your relationship with Zuyun? After Sun Suanhua's talisman hit Mengwei, it immediately turned into a pool of water mist, which subsided a lot of the fire on her body, and then she asked. However, hearing this familiar voice, Mengwei screamed, "Grandpa!" Sun Suanhua's hand froze, and his expression froze. After a moment, he murmured, "Girl! Grandpa, it's me!" Mengwei screamed, extremely excited, but restricted by the realm. Not only was the fire repelled by Sun Suanhua's talisman, reducing her spiritual power, but she was also suppressed and could not move, and could not run to Sun Suanhua at all. "Girl, why have you changed? Your cultivation has also regressed." Sun Suanhua quickly removed the pressure and asked in disbelief. "Grandpa, it's a long story." Mengwei silently recited the magic formula outside his body, and the spiritual power in his body surged, and the mist around him evaporated. Then he said, "I encountered a lot of changes in Yeazhu, but you, why are you here?" As for me, Sun Suanhua smiled bitterly and said, "It's a long story, anyway, I'm just unlucky." "By the way, how did you become the apprentice of Xianxia, that bastard?" "Oh, Grandpa, don't ask, let's go quickly. I made a little noise just now. If I don't leave, I will attract Xianxia, and I can't leave." Mengwei felt a little regretful. If she knew that Sun Suanhua was hiding in the formation, she would definitely not set fire to the cave unscrupulously. "How to leave? You are only in the chi-refining stage, and I am only in the foundation building stage. Once you get out, you won't be able to escape." Sun Suanhua looked troubled. "Grandpa, I was already prepared when I came to see Zhu Fengzi, just follow me." With that said, Mengwei was going to pull Sun Suanhua. Sun Suanhua suddenly slapped his forehead and said anxiously, "Hey, yes, there is also that boy Zhu Feng, why don't you take him with you?" "Zhu Feng?" Mengwei's face darkened and he said, "Grandpa, I heard Zuyun say before that Zhu Feng almost killed his master in Lingjian sect. I also accidentally found out about him this time, so I came over to take a look. Then I went to tell Zuyun. But I never thought that this place seemed to be a branch of Wanjian Mountain." "What, regicide?" Sun Suanhua's expression changed. "You must know that these days, he has already accepted Zhu Feng as his disciple, teaching him all his skills. It is true that he once told Zuyun that if there was a conflict of interest, he could kill him under certain circumstances. But you have to know, how old is Zhu Feng at this time, and he has such a vicious mind?" "That's right, I don't know much, and it's a long story. Grandpa, if you don't leave, it will be too late. Moreover, this kid Zhu Feng wants to kill me, I have already seen it." Sun Suanhua breathed quickly, and after a deep breath, he said, "Then how do we leave?" Mengwei said, "You come out of the cave with me, and I will leave before they come back." Sun Suanhua nodded repeatedly, then pressed the formation formula, opened the formation door, and rushed out of the cave together with Mengwei. Mengwei looked up to the sky and shouted. In an instant, a golden light fell from the sky, and the evil spirit followed closely. "This is..." Sun Suanhua was shocked. He recognized what kind of monster Big Bird was. But at this time, there was no time to say more. As Mengwei greeted her, he followed her and jumped on the back of the Big Bird. "Big Bird, let's go all the way north. Call." The Big Bird flapped its wings and soared into the sky. When Xianxia discovered the strange movement here and came with Zhu Feng, the two of them fled away. On the back of the Big Bird, Mengwei told Sun Suanhua everything, and even told him the speculation that Zhu Feng was a demon cultivator, which made Sun Suanhua couldn't help but scream in horror. No wonder this boy looks at me with a burning look, it turns out he wants to learn my skills and kill the donkey. Sun Suanhua was not very strong, but when he recalled everything about Zhu Feng, he immediately guessed this. He unconditionally chose to believe in Meng Wei. It can be said that the two have a lifelong friendship, a true friendship that lasts forever. Of course, the older ones must be Meng Wei. Girl. After feeling lingering fear, Sun Suanhua shouted loudly against the airflow in mid-air. Meng Wei looked at Sun Suanhua's bright eyes. We need to find Zhu Yun, and I need to tell him. What? Meng Wei heard the word Zhu Yun without hearing it clearly. Tell him that this brother should not stay for a long time. Listening to Sun Suanhua calling loudly, Meng Wei didn't understand it at first, thinking to himself, aren't we just leaving? Seeing his serious look, I instantly understood that Sun Suanhua was talking about his younger brother's brother, not the place. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 362. Meng Wei was speechless. What he said seemed to make sense. Moreover, Sun Suanhua maintained the same idea with her, that is, Zhu Yun should make the decision on Zhu Feng himself. Girl, where are we going now? Sun Suanhua has found the ground fire. The mission is completed and he can return to Yezhu. First go to the demon refining tower to check the situation, and then I plan to practice in Chuzhu for a while. Demon refining tower? Where are you going? Do you want to imprison it in the demon refining tower? Sun Suanhua pointed downward and said. They all sat on the back of the big bird. Meng Wei was afraid of scaring Sun Suanhua and said with a smile, I promised him to take him home. His home is near the demon refining tower, but I don't know if he came from the demon refining tower. No, girl, such a good monster, why are you willing to let it go? Sun Suanhua was anxious. If he sat on this bird and went back, he would be able to return to the 7-star gate in half a month at most. Grandpa, Meng Wei thought for a moment and then recounted Niao's story. Half an hour later, Sun Suanhua was stunned and said, you said he will turn into a human. Well, I drank his blood, so I woke up. Otherwise, it would have taken who knows how long it would have taken for the injury to heal. Meng Wei touched his lower abdomen, and the earth fire was in his dantian. Yes, you are really brave. During the qi refining period, you only practice the fire technique and you still dare to walk by water. You are really not afraid of death. Sun Suanhua said speechlessly. Meng Wei pretended to be relaxed and said, if it weren't for this, I wouldn't have rescued you. Ha ha ha, yes, we are really destined. But girl, you have lied to me twice. The last time you said you were Zhu Yun's sister, this time, I almost thought you were your own sister. Hearing this, Meng Wei laughed dumbly, and the atmosphere became much more relaxed. After a while, Sun Suanhua took the initiative to tell Meng Wei that he could stay in Chuzhu temporarily until she reached the foundation building stage. This made Meng Wei extremely happy. Sun Suanhua swallowed a longevity pill, so he no longer had to worry about his longevity. Anyway, returning to Qixingmen was just for refining the pill, so he might as well stay in Chuzhu. Moreover, the demon refining tower is close to the Shiwanda mountain. It not only contains materials for monsters, but also some common elixirs. It didn't have much impact on his alchemy practice. A few days later, Zhu Yun appeared at the border of Yezhu. Along the way, he used his spiritual power and spiritual stones to control the flying boat alternately, and the speed was not slow. Although he snatched some spirit stones from the hands of the foundation building people outside the demon refining tower, Zhu Yun did not dare to use them indiscriminately. He has suffered enough without the spiritual stone. I have been in Chuzhu for so long, either practicing or running for my life. Feeling the cool breeze coming towards him, Zhu Yun sighed, although Chuzhu is good, it's too hot. The air in Yezhu is still fresh. It's no wonder that Yezhu is the center of Yezhu. For the sake of safety, after arriving in Yezhu, he used all the spirit stones to drive the flying boat, while he himself was condescending, seeming to be watching the scenery, but in fact, he was observing the situation on the ground. Strange, why are there almost no monks in the elixir formation stage? He was afraid that some monks in the pill formation stage would come up to rob him, but after passing through several sects, most of them could only see disciples in the foundation formation stage. Although he didn't know the sect, he knew that in Yezhu, to be able to establish a sect, at least there must be someone in the late stage of forming the core. After passing through several sects one after another, Zuyun still couldn't see the elixir formation stage. How did he know that the entire Danja period in Yezhu had been slaughtered by Wanjian Mountain? Even extremely talented foundation-building disciples were kidnapped and sent to the Liwo sect as gatekeepers. Just for Wan Jianshan's personal vendetta, he killed Tang Tiangang and captured Xi'an City, using it as a bridgehead to encroach on the entire Chuzhu. Little did he know that Zuyun accidentally killed Wan Jianren's golden elixir hidden in Xiao Zone, causing Wan Jianshan's soul card to be destroyed, scaring all the ordinary disciples into fleeing in panic. Those disciples were not advanced enough and did not know that Wan Jianren had been missing for many years. They only knew that Wan Jianren was their mountain master. The death of the mountain owner is enough to show that Wanjian Mountain has provoked a powerful senior who should not be provoked. At that time, there was no one in the mountain who was in charge. In order to survive, they naturally chose to sever all relations with Wanjian Mountain. Among the 18 prefectures in the Yao border, in addition to the 3 prefectures of Yunchu and Yao, there are also 15 prefectures in the northeast. In their foundation building stage, they can still live a carefree life. Rather than staying in Wanjian Mountain and waiting for the unknown danger to come, it is better to escape from here. Now, Zuyun only knew that there could not be a large number of people in Wanjian Mountain. As far as he could guess, they would only be in 3 or 5 stages of forming pills at most. He has nothing to fear. At worst, those few pill-forming stages will also be wiped out. But at this time, the deserted Yezhu gave him a sense of crisis. Maybe it has something to do with Wanjian Mountain. Could it be that, these sects took advantage of Wanjian Mountain's emptiness and besieged it together? Zuyun felt that it was very possible, so he was a little afraid to continue using the flying boat. The flying boat is too conspicuous, the golden light shines, and anyone can recognize it. This is something unique to Wanjian Mountain. After finding an inconspicuous wilderness, Zuyun landed. After rummaging through the storage bag for a while, he found a low-grade spiritual sword, and swallowed a breath-condensing pill to suppress his realm to the foundation building stage before flying with the sword. Find a way to sneak into Wanjian Mountain, but should you take the fragment first or the sword first? As Zuyun flew, he began to decide what to do next. If he took the fragments first, he was afraid of attracting the attention of other people in Wanjian Mountain. If he was besieged by the Jindan stage of Wanjian Mountain and let them be alert, he might be discovered if he came to refine the giant sword secretly. But if he refined the giant sword first, it would definitely make a lot of noise, and it would be even more impossible to steal the fragments. He knew that the high-level people in Wanjian Mountain lived on the sword, and if he showed any clues, he would be in big trouble. But after thinking about it, Zuyun decided to refine the sword first. He was now lacking a handy magic weapon. If the sword was really useful, it would undoubtedly enhance his combat power. When the time comes to deal with the Jindan stage, it would be a pleasure to kill one with a sword energy. After deciding, Zuyun hurried on his way. Finally, a few days later, Zuyun arrived at the bottom of Wanjian Mountain. This was his first time here. Even though he had heard about how magnificent the giant sword was, he was shocked when he saw it. The tip of the giant sword was completely immersed in the earth. According to his guess, the exposed sword body was less than half. If the legend is true, it is enough to show how terrifying Ye Yang's hammer is. There are clusters of buildings around the sword inserted into the ground. These are the residences of the foundation building disciples of Wanjian Mountain. But at this time, there is no one to be seen. Strange, where are the people from Wanjian Mountain? Have they all gone to Chezhu? Zuyun was slightly stunned and looked in all directions. There is no one. He frowned and thought to himself, no way, there is no one down there? What about the forbidden area that Tang Tiangang said? Zuyun searched for a while and found an open area behind this group of buildings. He did not rush to approach, but performed the breaking void spirit eye technique. In an instant, array patterns emerged, and he laughed out loud. No way, the forbidden area of Wanjian Mountain is actually shielded by such a simple array. Putting away his smile, he looked up at the hilt of the sword again. Faintly, he saw the flow of spiritual power. Obviously, there was someone on the platform of the hilt. De Go said that, except for the permission of the Jindan stage, ordinary disciples were not allowed to go up. But at this time, there was no one around, so it was the elders who stayed on Wanjian Mountain. After confirming it, Zuyun's mind moved. I saw his figure suddenly disappear, and after a barely perceptible flash of lightning in the air, Zuyun appeared 200 steps away. After using the thunder escape technique several times, Zuyun escaped directly to the tip of the sword. There is really no one. Don't blame me for being rude. Zuyun smiled and reached out to touch 81 spiritual stones from the storage bag. Refining this sword requires no mistakes. If it fails once, I'm afraid there will be no chance again. When he spoke, his eyes were extremely solemn. After laying down the spiritual stones one by one, an extremely large 9 transformations and 9 yangs formation took shape. From the outside, it seemed that there was nothing unusual. But in the formation, Zuyun had already prepared for 10,000 swords. Burning Sky Flame. With a light shout, the burning sky flame jumped out of the fire spirit pearl, gushed out of his heart, and jumped into the palm of his hand. Refine this sword. With his order, the burning sky flame grew stronger, and the aura of heavenly fire quickly filled the entire 9 transformations 9 suns formation. Zuyun nodded slightly. It seemed that the burning sky flame had grown a lot in the fire spirit pearl. The burning sky flame jumped to the ground and quickly rushed to the intersection of the sword body and the ground. After touching the sword body, the burning sky flame began to move slowly and formed a circle. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 363. Zuyun stood under the giant sword and looked up, unable to see the sky. The huge hilt of the sword hung above his head like a meteorite from the sky. I don't know how Ye Yang hammered down such a big sword at that time. Zuyun sighed and waited until Fen Tianyan had calcined a section of the sword before sitting down cross-legged and forming a connection with Fen Tianyan. This was his first time refining other magic weapons, and Zuyun had no experience. But this is also one of Sun Suanhua's methods for refining weapons, and he knows the steps clearly. As his mind was immersed, Zuyun seemed to feel that he had become Fen Tianyan, slowly using the unique power of Tianhuo to erode the sword body. The giant sword has remained here for thousands of years. Exposed to the sun, rain, and weather. Zuyun originally thought that the giant sword was earthy in color, but he did not expect that under the burning of Fen Tianyan, the layers of mottled wall were burned away, revealing a dark black color. Is this the original color of the giant sword? What kind of material is it made of, and I can't even recognize it? Zuyun was startled. The black color seemed to frighten people. He was so frightened that he quickly cheered up and continued to refine the giant sword. But that sliver of black, like the erosion of bones, occupied Zuyun's zifu, staring at him coldly. It's scary, why is it so scary? He took a deep breath and completely suppressed his thoughts. Little did he know that he was asking for trouble in all of this. Because he forgot to remove the void-breaking eyes technique and saw through the essence of this sword. Fortunately, Zhu Yundao has a strong heart and is not a swordsman. No matter how weird this sword is, it wants to bite Zhu Yun back, but there is no way to do it. Fen Tianyan is a heavenly fire, and was once the master of the immortal mansion. Its rank is far higher than this sword. As Fen Tianyan gradually burned, the heat gradually spread to the hilt of the sword. On the platform, the three of them were bored during the elixir formation period. There are no more disciples at the bottom of the mountain, they only need to guard the mountain gate above. At first, they followed Jian Er and others and killed all over Yezhu. Except for Li Chengan, there is no one in the entire Yezhu who is in the Danja stage. Therefore, they are not worried at all that anyone will dare to come to Wanjian Mountain. Strange, why do I feel a little hot under my butt? At this time, Jian Jiuju suddenly spoke, stood up, walked to the edge of the platform, and looked down. Are you crazy? You have been here for several years and you have an illusion. Xianxia was said coldly. 19, I think you still have inner demons. The last person is Jian Shiba, De Go, and Chen Hua's master in Wanjian Mountain. Inner demon. Jian Jiju looked back and smiled, how can we sword cultivators have any inner demons? Even if we did, they were killed by my inner sword. Jian Shishi sneered, 19, should your inner demon be related to your father? Suddenly, Jian Jiju's expression condensed and he said, 15, after I joined Wanjian Mountain, I have no further relationship with the 7-star sect. Jian 15 was non-committal, and closed his eyes to rest. Jian Shiba said, 19 and 15 are right, I think so too. Anyway, there is nothing to do if you sit here, why don't you quietly enter the Holy Land sword pond to wash yourself, and no one will know. Jian Jiu's eyes suddenly opened, revealing a ray of light. But soon, it dimmed again, and he said softly, I don't dare to enter the Holy Land space at will. If an elder happens to come back and I enter the Holy Land without permission, I will die. Xianxia was said calmly again, although we still have hundreds of years to live, we can sit here for 3 years. It's not a lot, but it's a lot. Cultivation is like sailing against the current. If you don't advance, you will retreat. I think what Shiba said makes sense. Jian Shiba raised his eyebrows and said, there is no news coming from Chuzhu now. Why don't we still go into the sword pool to practice, with one person standing guard and the other person responsible for spreading the news? 1 month per person, in the Holy Land there is May in the middle, what do you think? Yes, the 3 of us take turns to stay for 1 month, and the outside world only lasts for more than 3 months. I agree with what 18 said. Jian 15 stood up, and both his and Jian 18's eyes fell on Jian 19. Jian Ju has no choice. Not to mention complicity. I really can't practice with peace of mind here. In the Holy Land, there is abundant spiritual power. Not only is there a sword pool, but the Sword Mountain is also an excellent place for practicing swordsmanship. Xianxia can feel the power of the sword. And the swordsman can understand the way of swordsmanship. Okay, who will go in first? Jian 19 agreed and looked at Jian 15. There is an unwritten rule in Wanjian Mountain. If something has to happen in turn, the order of the elder's position will be followed. Jian Shishi was not polite, turned around and walked towards the main hall in the hilt of the sword. When the first month is up, it will be changed to 18. Therefore, 18 is responsible for reporting the news, and 19 is responsible for guarding. After the words fell, Sword 15 and Sword 18 appeared at the hilt of the sword at the same time. However, Jian 15 went deep inside, while Jian 18 guarded the door. Sword 19 was concentrating on it, walking around the sword hilt platform, looking very far away. The warm feeling he felt before was completely forgotten by him. Maybe they were right. When they were free, they began to think wildly, and inner demons really appeared. But at that time, everyone was their own master. Was I wrong? Jianju touched his chest, shook his head, and threw the thought out of his mind. Now that something has been done, it is impossible to influence him. At this time, Zuyun controlled Fen Tianyan, layer by layer, burning away the dust that had been attached to it for thousands of years. The exposed area of the giant sword is getting larger and larger. But for the entire giant sword, it is like a drop in the bucket. Zuyun was not impatient. He had long expected that refining a giant sword would not be so easy, so he used 81 spiritual stones to set up the 9-turn 9-yang formation. As long as no one breaks the formation forcibly, this formation can run for at least a year. In the array, after the temperature rose to a certain level, it stabilized. It stands to reason that the stronger the fire, the hotter it will be in the 9 turns and 9 suns formation. But for some reason, not only did the temperature no longer rise, Zuyun could also feel a touch of coldness, impacting his golden elixir from time to time. Wrong. His golden elixir is not an elixir, but a seed. When Zuyun felt the coldness suddenly appear in his body for the first time and hit the seeds, Zuyun was startled. It can be found that the seeds are extremely hard and have not been affected at all. Moreover, this cold power quickly dissipated after one failed attack. Simply, Zuyun ignored it and concentrated on controlling the burning sky flame to calcine the giant sword. Time passed quickly. An hour. 1 day. 10 days. Dust also fell on Zuyun's body. But he had no idea, he was completely immersed in it. After using the spiritual fire symbiosis technique, Zuyun's chaotic power can always be provided to Fen Tianyan. Chaos power continuously pours out of the seeds. The magical thing is that the seeds seem to absorb the spiritual power in the air on their own and transform it into chaos power again. The cycle goes back and forth, leaving Zuyun in an extremely mysterious balance. The 5 elements of Chaos Sutra emphasizes a word of balance, which is vividly displayed at this moment. In fact, this is entirely due to many factors. In addition to Zuyun breaking through the pill formation stage and having a surge in spiritual power, the seeds formed also played a big role. It's just that Zuyun doesn't know what the magical use of the seed is. If those fairy medicines in the medicine garden knew more, they might be able to give Zuyun the answer. Other side. Big Bird took Sun Suanhua and Mengwei to the demon refining tower. Looking at the demon refining tower standing on the top of the mountain, filled with black energy, both of them were extremely shocked. They are not like Zuyun, who has such a wonderful method as the void-breaking spiritual eye technique, so that they can see through the illusory and mind-shattering black mist of the demon refining tower. A bird, just land at the entrance of the tower and take a look. After Aniao flew to the demon refining tower and circled in the sky, Mengwei and Sun Suanhua didn't notice anyone around them, so they let Aniao fall down. After Aniao carried the two of them to the ground, he also transformed into a strong young man, which made Sun Suanhua marvel. Along the way, he had no chance to tell Mengwei his guess, because he was afraid that it would irritate Aniao and threaten them. But now seeing Aniao listening to Mengwei's words like this, he couldn't bear it anymore and asked Aniao, "Aniao, do you know what kind of monster you are?" Aniao shook his head with a confused expression, but Mengwei frowned, and then looked at Sun Suanhua. "Grandpa, do you recognize Aniao?" Sun Suanhua glanced meaningfully at the demon refining tower, and then set his sights on Aniao. After a long while, he said, "If Aniao really came out of the demon refining tower, then he must be the demon king in the demon refining tower." As soon as these words came out, Aniao and Mengwei were dumbfounded. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 364. Grandpa, isn't this your first time in the demon refining tower? On the way here, Sun Suanhua also told Meng Wei about his experiences over the years. In terms of luck, he was indeed quite good. As soon as he arrived in Chuzhu, he went to the volcanic belt to find a fire. But who knew that he was too excited and was soon captured and imprisoned by Li Yan of the Liwo sect. Most of the information about the demon refining tower was what he had heard before. How could he know that Aniao was the demon king? Sun Suanhua smiled and said, in fact, there are a few reasons to know that Aniao is the demon king. First, his blood can heal you. As an alchemist, what do you think? Hearing this question, Meng Wei was suddenly shocked. This was indeed overlooked by her. Secondly, Aniao was picked up by Awu, whom you mentioned, near the demon refining tower. Third, Aniao himself has no memory, which means that he was suppressed by the demon refining tower, so he can't remember. This point can be proved by the fact that Awu told you that when he first picked up Aniao, he was very reluctant to get close to the demon refining tower. Demons have instincts, they seek benefits and avoid harm, which is stronger than us humans. Fourth, Aniao's demon power is so huge, and it can also transform into a human. In my opinion, Aniao is at least a demon beast in the transformation stage, isn't that a demon king? Meng Wei listened to Sun Suanhua's analysis in a daze, her mind was completely empty. She could never have imagined that she had ordered a demon king all the way. After a while, she couldn't help swallowing her saliva and pointed to the bronze door of the demon refining tower and asked Aniao. Aniao, Grandpa is right, so do you still want to go back to the demon refining tower? However, Aniao held his head in pain, shook his head vigorously and said, I don't know, I don't know. Aniao. Seeing this, Meng Wei shouted, it's up to you to choose. You have always wanted to find the place where you were born, and you also want to understand why you turned into a bird. Now, Grandpa and I have found it for you. So, you make your own choice next. Sun Suanhua looked at Aniao meaningfully, but he didn't say anything. Aniao is not only a demon king level existence, but also an extremely rare species among demon beasts. Golden Peng. It is said that after the Golden Peng reaches the transformation stage, it is almost invincible among demon beasts. In addition to the lightning speed, a pair of wings and claws are also extremely fierce. But obviously, Aniao, who has lost all his memories, doesn't know it. It's not that Sun Suanhua doesn't want to subdue Aniao as his pet. Not to mention him, any cultivator, seeing the Golden Peng is tantamount to seeing a strange treasure that can achieve immortality and fight. But if you want to tame it, you must be strong enough. He is only in the foundation building stage, this is a fantasy. But selfishly, he still hopes that Aniao can follow Meng Wei, which is equivalent to following him and entering the 10,000 mountains, and there will be no danger. Fairy, I just want to be a human, I don't want to be a demon. Aniao squatted down in pain, tears rolling down her eyes. Meng Wei choked and didn't know how to comfort her. She looked up at the demon refining tower, then retracted her gaze, squatted in front of Aniao, and whispered, Aniao, aren't you a human now? Hearing this, Aniao was stunned. Even Meng Wei himself didn't know that just a word of comfort had untied Aniao's knot invisibly. Yes, I am a human. Aniao stood up suddenly laughed out loud, and said, I have been a human for more than 20 years, how can I not be a human? Meng Wei stared at Aniao dancing with surprise in his heart. But suddenly, a violent sound came from the demon refining tower. Following closely, the ground began to shake. Earth collapse. Sun Suanhua's pupils shrank, thinking it was not good. He also looked at the demon refining tower in a hurry, but saw that the black color lingering outside the tower suddenly turned into a dark red color. Not good, the demon refining tower has changed, girl, Let's go quickly. Sun Suanhua shouted anxiously, and Meng Wei also reacted, but she couldn't fly with the weapon. Sun Suanhua was not strong, and she couldn't take care of herself. In a hurry, Aniao suddenly shouted, "Fairy, get on my back. And Grandpa, fly over here quickly." When the two looked over, they saw that Aniao had turned into a golden rock again. Meng Wei jumped up without hesitation, and Sun Suanhua also rushed over on his magic weapon and landed on Aniao's back. In a flash, the rocks under his feet suddenly collapsed, and collapsed like an avalanche. Even the demon refining tower had no support and fell in the air. Aniao felt an invisible fear and flapped his wings to fly. Not long after, he flew into the 10,000 mountains. "Grandpa, did you see it?" When the demon refining tower completely disappeared from sight, Meng Wei suddenly spoke. Sun Suanhua's face was extremely solemn, nodded, and said, "The demon refining tower has become smaller. Is it Chuzhu that has changed, or Yejing that has changed?" Meng Tianya almost trembled as he said this. The demon refining tower looked like it had been refined into a treasure. A person with such magical powers must be able to control the monsters in it. And Chuzhu has always said that there are big monsters in the demon refining tower, and there are a lot of them. Since there can be a golden pen monster king like Aniao, there must be other monster kings. The two looked at each other and both took a breath of cold air. Let alone anything else, even if one of the demon kings is controlled by someone and falls into Yejing, I am afraid that wherever it goes, all the people will be destroyed and there will be no recovery. "Grandpa, what should we do?" Meng Wei asked in a trembling voice. "Because there are people she cares about in Yejing." Sun Suanhua wanted to say that we should just hide in the Shiwen mountains and live a miserable life. But when he saw the tears in Meng Wei's eyes, he knew that this girl was worried about Zuyun. Taking a deep breath, Sun Suanhua said in a deep voice, "Girl, Zuyun is a lucky guy with many tricks. Maybe he can survive." "But..." "Girl," Sun Suanhua said in a low voice, "I know you are worried about Zuyun, but now, if we return the same way, we will die. If you really want to save Zuyun and do your best, save your life first and then talk about other things." Meng Wei covered her mouth, and 2 lines of tears flowed silently. She knew that what Sun Suanhua said was right. But she was in a hurry. At this time, Aniao suddenly slowed down and fell into the mountains. "Fairy, if you want to find someone, I'll take you there. I'm afraid of the demon refining tower, but I can go around it." Hearing this, Sun Suanhua immediately blew his beard and glared, saying, "Aniao, you are really a bird. Do you know how powerful the person who can refine the treasures of the demon refining tower is? According to my experience in refining magic tools, the demon refining tower can definitely track the monsters with demonic energy. You are a demon king level existence. The person holding the demon refining tower will definitely suppress you in it and use you for his own purposes." Aniao said in a daze, "Grandpa, I have become a human now. Can the demon refining tower feel it?" Sun Suanhua was also stunned when he said this. "It seems, yes. If the demon refining tower can suppress people, what will happen?" Instantly, he had a plan in mind, and said, "In this case, we will go around to the north. According to my inquiries, there is also a big force there, called the Silver Sword Sect." "Girl, I have to wrong you again." "Me?" Meng Wei pointed at himself, somewhat puzzled. "Ha ha ha, since you can sneak into Wanjian Mountain, you can naturally sneak into the Silver Sword Sect. You know, the Silver Sword Sect is full of female cultivators, and they also use swords. With your age of more than 10 years old, plus the realm of the 5th level of the Chain Chi, plus the unique breath-retaining technique, if you can conceal the rest of the breath, anyone will treat you as a blank sheet of paper, and they can let them draw on you." Listening to Sun Suanhua's words, Meng Wei immediately understood what he meant. This not only requires seeking the protection of the Silver Sword sect, but also asking through the Silver Sword sect. There is strength in numbers, maybe you can really find out about Zhu Yun. And if you want to escape, just like you escaped before, let Aniao do your orders. The most important thing is that during this period of time, we can completely avoid the people in the demon refining tower. Great. Meng Wei immediately looked at Aniao and said, let's go quickly to the Silver Sword sect. After that, he said to Sun Suanhua, Grandpa, you are responsible for taking Aniao away. He can't turn into a bird now to prevent the leakage of demonic energy. The three of them quickly went north. However, the mountain road is difficult to walk, and they will encounter monsters from time to time. Their speed is not very fast. Similarly, Zhu Yun's speed of refining the giant sword is still very slow. But the advantage is that he is not in any danger. He burns the attached ash layer by layer step by step, and at the same time uses the burning sky flame to mark his own mark layer by layer. At this speed, in at most 3 months, Zhu Yun can completely refine the giant sword. But he doesn't know that Chuzhu has undergone a shocking change. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 365. In Qian City, Tang Tiangang almost single-handedly managed to hold on to more than a dozen people from the Wanjian Mountain Formation Dan stage. He has been in business for hundreds of years and has set up countless formations in Qian City. Even if someone can break into his city lord's mansion, they may not be able to kill him. Because there are many small teleportation arrays he has arranged in the city. Unless Wanjian Mountain can control the entire Scarlet Flame City. But this is easier said than done. There are so many people that Tang Tiangang can use, and there are no fewer than Wanjianshan who are above the Danji stage. For Wanjianshan, Qian City is the hardest bone they have encountered in the past 1,000 years. But today, the fierce battle in Qian City finally stopped. Under the blue sky and white sun, countless monsters came from the west and came one after another. As a person from Scarlet Flame City, I am used to seeing beasts swarming at night, but in broad daylight, I have never heard of it. These monsters are extremely ferocious. Like a locust plague on the ground ravaging the rice fields of the world. Everywhere he went, there was devastation. The expressions of Jianyi and others also changed drastically. Their strength can be said to be at the top of the entire Yao realm, and they can see deeper places. It is after this beast tide that the power of destroying the heaven and the earth is faintly revealed. Fear. Escape. Jianyi gave the order, and all the Danja stages launched their flying boats, turned into golden light and rushed towards the south. But those people in the Danja period who were confronting them and controlled by Tang Tiangang had nowhere to go. Tang Tiangang did not come forward, but issued a death order to trap them here with a formation to resist the people of Wanjian Mountain. He showed no pity at all. As long as he could get Wanjianshan's casualties and consume their vitality, it was acceptable to him. Therefore, at this time, Tang Tiangang had no idea what Qian City was about to face. Everyone is in the elixir formation stage and are in a dilemma. They were unable to leave Xian City, let alone enter Xian City to take refuge. Until these beasts are approaching, if you want to survive, you have to fight hard. But with such a horde of beasts, what can they do no matter how strong they are? Gradually, the Beast Dynasty tore through the city defense formation, rushed into Scarlet Flame City, swarmed up the city wall, and jumped into the sky. This place will soon be miserable, like purgatory on earth. At the same time, Jianyi and the others had already fled more than 100 miles away before slowing down. That tide of beasts is even more terrifying than the one at night. Along the way, they drove the flying boat crazily, and their spiritual power reached its peak. Only then could they breathe a sigh of relief. Brother first, it seems that Tang Tiangang is bound to die. Jianzhan said from the side. But there was no joy in his expression. Not only did they want to kill Tang Tiangang, but they also wanted to capture Xian City as a bridgehead to unify Chuzhu. Pity. Not only was everything gone, but it also made them feel that Chuzhu was about to suffer a disaster. I'm afraid the land of Chuzhu is about to end. Let's go back to Liwo sect first and meet up with the second brother, then take everyone with us and return to Yezhu. Jianyi was also decisive and gave up on Chuzhu in one word. Everyone obeyed, but Jiansan let out a sigh and said, "Brother one, it seems that Li Chengan didn't come with us." Jianyi raised his eyebrows and said, "Forget it, never mind, he probably still thinks about his son in Scarlet Flame City. Now he has no use value, so he will die if he dies." After saying that, he led everyone back to Liwo sect. Jian was in a very bad mood. Because the apprentice I just accepted is gone. However, he felt some demonic energy and thought that a powerful individual demonic beast had raided here and abducted Mengwei. Zhu Feng was extremely angry. Because Sun Suanhua is also missing. During these days, Zhu Feng got angry from time to time and started to smash things in his cave. He never imagined that Sun Suanhua would leave him without leaving any message. It must be Jian Yun's fault. Sure enough, no one can believe it. Is Jian Yun a little girl? Humph, I don't believe it. Don't let me meet you, otherwise, I will kill you. Zhu Fengqian calmed down, but fortunately for him, during the time he spent with Sun Suanhua, he memorized almost all his skills. Just not mature enough. Relatively speaking, only the 9 turns and 9 suns formation is more skilled. Because of this, after there was no one in the cave, Zhu Feng swallowed the foundation establishment pill, and his strength reached the early stage of foundation establishment. Moreover, he has begun to trap and kill other foundation building disciples, and his strength is advancing very quickly. However, in order to avoid being discovered by Jian he also took the Zixi pill. This was left over from Sun Suanhua's formation, and it was just for his use. As long as Jian didn't deliberately use his spiritual consciousness to pour into his danshan to investigate, he would definitely not be able to find it. But Jian almost never came after Zhu Feng broke through the foundation building period. He received messages from his disciples one after another, saying that after a few days, someone would always go missing. Having learned from Mengwei's disappearance, Jian thought that this place was being targeted by the monster, and had no time to pay attention to Zhu Feng. Until today, Jian Yi and others came back. "Brother Yi, have you captured Xian City?" When Jian saw everyone, he felt something was inappropriate as soon as he asked. If that's the case, why do they all want to come back? Jian looked solemn and said, "Chuzhu has undergone tremendous changes. Monsters are coming, and I suspect there will be big monsters. We have to leave quickly and go back to Wanjian Mountain." "What?" Jian was startled, and then said, "Recently, there have been a series of monster attacks here, so fast that even I couldn't detect it." Everyone was immediately very surprised, and Jian looked even more solemn, saying, "It seems that Chuzhu will become the world of monsters. That day outside Xian City, I always felt that there were more terrifying beings after the beast tide. Now there are also here, it seems that Chuzhu is really not something we can covet. What about these disciples under the sect?" Jian looked outside. "Take them all back together. It's impossible that there are only us old guys left in Wanjian Mountain, right? We need some people to do miscellaneous things." As Jian made the decision, Wan Jianshan and others in Liwo sect prepared to return to Wanjian Mountain. It's just that it's a long way to go back from here. Walking thousands of miles, you can only get to Nanyazhu, and then go back to Wanjianshan in Biyazhu. It will take a month to use a flying boat. Not to mention, you need to bring a group of young people. Fortunately, the people in Wanjian Mountain have good execution ability, and each of them has a flying boat, which can bring many disciples. Zhu Feng was also taken to Jian Er's flying boat. Master, where are we going? Zhu Feng was confused. Why are we leaving for no reason? It seems that the whole family is moving. Go back to Wanjian Mountain. Jian Er looked at Zhu Feng, his eyes softened instantly, and said, when the time comes, I will tell an elder to let you practice in the sword pool. I believe it will be of great help to you. Sword pool. Zhu Feng didn't know what it was for. Yes, the sword pool. The sword pool contains sword power. Even if you can absorb a trace of sword power, your strength will be improved a lot. Hearing this, Zhu Feng's eyes lit up. Didn't his magic power rely on absorbing various powers to break through? If he could absorb all the sword power for his own use, breaking through the Jindan stage would be just around the corner. Suddenly, he was extremely excited and said to Jian Er respectfully, thank you, Master. At this time, Zhu Yun had been refining at the bottom of Wanjian Mountain for more than 2 months. The whole sword body revealed its true appearance, which was dark and shone with a terrifying cold light. But on the hilt platform, Jian Chaiwu and others were blocked by the hilt and could not detect it at all. In addition, the more the sword body was revealed, the stronger the coolness became, forming a neutral trend with the heat of the burning sky flame. This made Jian Chaiwu and others unable to find any abnormality. Moreover, one of them stayed on the platform to observe whether there was anyone coming from the sky in all directions, and the other was guarding the hilt to prepare to report the news. This undoubtedly made Zhu Yun's refining even more safe. The beast tied in Chuzhu continued to ravage the 4 directions. Zhu Yun's burning sky flame also continued to burn the giant sword. Nearly a month passed again. Many places in Chuzhu fell, and a large number of monsters crossed the border and began to invade Yazhu. Zhu Yun had also burned the burning sky flame on the hilt. The last step. As long as the hilt is refined, then this giant sword will become his magic weapon. The 3 people on the hilt still didn't notice it. They were completely immersed in the ecstasy of taking turns to enter the sword pool. In 3 months, everyone gained a lot in the sword pool. When Jian 19 was replaced and responsible for guarding, countless familiar golden lights appeared in the western sky. The first elder and the others are back. Jian 19 turned his head and screamed at Jian 18. Jian 18 rushed to their holy space without hesitation and called out Jian 15 who had just jumped into the sword pool. When the 3 of them just stood on the edge of the hilt platform, all the flying boats happened to fall. At this time, there was a sudden loud noise. Boom! The giant sword vibrated, and the hilt platform kept shaking. Jian Yi and the others just relaxed their minds, but they were shocked by such a huge change, and they put away their flying boats and floated up. The foundation building period was confused and had no idea what was going on. Including Zhu Feng, everyone's face showed confusion. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 366. Brother Yi, what happened? A group of Jindan stage cultivators floated up, their faces full of fear. Although Wanjian Mountain is just a giant sword, it has been extremely stable for thousands of years. Even Jian Yi didn't know why such a change happened. Not to mention those foundation building stage cultivators who were standing on their own magic weapons. Zhu Feng was obsessed with the matter of the sword pool, and he didn't care about the life and death of Wanjian Mountain at all. He flew to Jian Er and asked in a low voice, Master, this is like a landslide. Will the sword pool be destroyed? Jian Er glared at him and said, now that the mountain has undergone a huge change, how can we talk about the sword pool? In this case, you should fly away quickly to avoid being affected. If something happens later, your master can't protect you. Seeing Jian Er's face so solemn, Zhu Feng also knew that the situation was serious. He controlled his spirit sword without hesitation and flew several miles before starting to fall. Hey, what's going on? Looking at the sword body that was completely black and was wrapped in flames, Zhu Feng was a little stunned. He had never been to Wanjian Mountain before, and he didn't know what it looked like. But he knew it, and the accident was caused by it. He thought for a moment, and when he was about to go back and tell Jian what he saw, there was another loud noise. Boom! When the loud noise came, it even set off a huge airflow, knocking all the foundation building period masters floating above the flying instruments out. Even Zhu Feng was affected, and he turned several somersaults in the air before he managed to stabilize his body. But those foundation building period masters were not so lucky. For those with less luck, the magic instruments were thrown away directly, and they fell straight from the sky and fell into the building complex. Zhu Feng felt distressed when he saw it. In his eyes, these were all spiritual powers that improved his realm. But at this time, he also knew that if he didn't run away, if the airflow was stronger, he would end up like them. Looking at the people in the Jindan period, they were much stronger, and although the airflow was strong, it also affected them. But at least, they could fly in the void, so it was no big deal if they were blown away. Zhu Feng gave up the idea of going to inform the news. Let me die, what does it have to do with me? At worst, I can be a casual cultivator, or go to other states to absorb cultivators. It's just that sword pool. Zhu Feng was a little unwilling, and after thinking about it, he decided to see the situation here first. Obviously, what we see now is that the changes are all caused by this giant sword. If luck is good, this sword kills everyone. Does he still have a chance? Thinking of this, Zhu Feng found a place, set up a small 9 transformations 9 yang formation, and then stayed there, quietly watching the changes of the giant sword. And Zhu Yun has reached the last step. As long as the burning sky flame surges up and engulfs the entire hilt, the sword can be completely refined. He shouted again, and the spiritual power surged out of the dantian that turned into a seed. Not only that, even the fire spirit pearl on the heart began to spin wildly, continuously pouring out the fire spiritual power, thus fueling the fire of the burning sky flame. At this time, the burning sky flame suddenly changed and suddenly jumped into the sky from the hilt. Hula! The sky was also printed in a fiery red color, as if it burned to the clouds. The sudden high temperature and flames made those Jindan stage retreat. Everyone's face was inexplicably horrified. Only Jianyi reacted at this time, and he couldn't help shouting, "No, someone is refining Wanjian Mountain." What? Besides him, only Jian and Jian San knew that Wanjian Mountain belonged to the sword. When the others were puzzled, Jianyi and the other two rushed down and fell to the ground. There was no one in the sky, so the person who was refining must be hiding under the sword. But at this time, they finally saw the dark sword body, and they were shocked beyond words. There were 3 Jindan stage people guarding Wanjian Mountain, and someone was secretly refining under their noses. Waste, waste. Jianyi's eyes were about to burst, and he fell to the ground with a bang. Then, he looked at the sword body. But there was no one. No one. Jianyi was stunned, and Jian and Jian San followed closely. Brother Yi, will there be a formation? Jian eyes flashed, and he drew his sword and slashed over there. Boom. Several formation patterns lit up, and Jianyi and Jian San didn't say much at all. They almost used their strongest sword moves at the same time and blasted towards the 9 transformations 9 yang formation. In the formation, Zhu Yun was also awakened. Hearing the deafening sound in his ears, he knew that his affairs had been exposed. But now, it was the most critical moment. He could only hope that the formation set up by the 81 spirit stones could last for a while longer. Otherwise, he could only flee to survive, and this almost finished giant sword could only be used as a wedding dress for others. Get up! With Zhu Yun's roar again, almost all the spiritual power in the seed was forcibly drawn out by him, and poured into the burning sky flame along the meridians. In the sky, the fire of the burning sky flame suddenly condensed into a huge palm, and Rong grabbed the hilt of the sword. Boom! The ground also began to shake. Zhu Yun saw that the tip of the sword was pulled away from the ground a little. Push, push. Since he was discovered, Zhu Yun no longer restrained his voice and almost roared hysterically, as if this would speed up the speed of Fen Tianyuan's sword. He knew. Once the sword was drawn, the sword would be completely refined by him. Outside the formation, all three of them used their strongest moves, but they could not break the 9 transformations 9 suns formation at all. Brother Yi, no. Jian roared. Even he saw that the giant sword seemed to be raised a little. Asan, go and call everyone down, quickly, quickly. Jian also roared, and slashed at the 9 transformations 9 suns formation with another sword. One move failed, but he knew how much he had consumed the power of the formation. At most one incense stick, he could break the formation. But now, the most lacking thing is time. No one knows better than him how powerful this giant sword is. Jian-san did not hesitate and took off into the air. After a moment, his voice was like a bell, and the call was heard by everyone. Come quickly, help Brother Yi. After saying that, he fell again. The other elders finally came back to their senses from the vision of Huashao drawing the sword, and they also fell rapidly. Attack the front, there is a formation here, and there are people in the formation. Jianzan said, and slashed the formation with a sword. Boom! 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 20 Jindan stage, with all their strength, the defense of the 9 turns 9 Yang formation dropped sharply. Even after each person hit twice, they could see the situation in the formation. A figure sitting cross-legged, with a pair of hands facing the sword body, was outputting a huge amount of spiritual power. Hurry up, kill that kid. Break the formation first. Damn it, dare to do this under my Wanjian mountain. Almost everyone was roaring. Except for Jianyi and the other 3, Wanjian mountain is almost the belief of others. Zhu Yun was blaspheming their faith. Furious. Break it for me. All kinds of sword lights, sword moves, and spiritual powers. All smashed on the formation. The formation pattern kept shaking, and it was even visible to the naked eye, and some formation patterns also broke. Quick, quick, this formation is going to fail. Jian-san roared. After the battle in Xian City, they had broken countless formations and could recognize the signs of breaking the formation. But Zhu Yun's 9 transformations and 9 suns formation was a formation that could be appreciated by Tang Tiangang. How could it be so easy? But after all, Zhu Yun's formation had no attack changes since it was laid, and it had no lethality at all. And even if there was, Zhu Yun was too busy to control the counter-attack. Quick, quick. These deafening shouts kept rushing into Zhu Yun's ears. Zhu Yun was anxious, but he knew that he couldn't be anxious for a while. It was even more impossible to relax. Once affected, it would be a failure. Boom boom boom. At this moment, the tip of the sword was finally pulled out by burning sky flame. Okay, ha ha ha, okay. Zhu Yun laughed wildly, his eyes were extremely red. For 3 consecutive months, he stayed up all night, constantly consuming spiritual power, and finally pulled out the sword at this moment. Then the next step is to use the sword for yourself. Burning sky flame, burn it for me. At Zhu Yun's command, the huge fire palm instantly turned into a sea of fire, coming down from the sky, wrapping around the hilt. In an instant, the giant sword turned into a fire sword. But the fire sword was also shrinking at a speed visible to the naked eye. As long as it shrinks to its normal size, this sword can be used by Zhu Yun. Boom! At this time, the 9 transformations and 9 suns formation was finally broken. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 367. Boy, suffer death. Xianyi shouted, and all kinds of sword moves rushed towards Zhu Yun. The sword is fast, Zhu Yun is faster. With a flash of fire, the giant sword turned into a 3-foot black sword and fell into Zhu Yun's hands. Thunder escape technique. Zhu Yun did not hesitate. He was trapped by a group of people at the stage of forming pills, and the other party was the first to strike. He could only avoid the edge for the time being. Lightning flashed and Zhu Yun suddenly disappeared. And all the attacks from Jianyi and more than 20 people fell on the spot where he was standing before. Boom boom boom. There was an explosion and smoke and dust everywhere. All the mud and rubble fell into that black hole. The cave left after the giant sword was pulled out. He ran away. The swords missed each other, and spiritual consciousness immediately surged out. I thought Zhu Yun was hiding in the hole, but he never thought that there was no life in the hole at all. 200 paces away. Zhu Yun's breathing was rapid, and he held the black sword tightly in his hand. In just a moment, he would be shattered to pieces. Fortunately, I have mastered the thunder escape technique. So at this point, should we fight back or flee? Buzz. Just when he was hesitating, the black sword rang out, and Zhu Yun quickly felt a fighting spirit. He was stunned for a moment, then immediately understood the meaning of this sword, and couldn't help but smile. Ha ha ha, if you want to fight, I will fight. After the words fell, all the elders of Wanjian Mountain turned their heads to look, only to realize that Zhu Yun was so far away. Young man, if you dare to steal my belongings from Wanjian Mountain, you will die. Jianyi was the strongest and ran towards Zhu Yun with sword steps. Golden light flashed, and the sword energy was threatening. That's it? Zhu Yun grinned and stepped forward to stab. An ordinary sword, but it releases a breathtaking sword energy. Let the sword energy out. Zhu Yun did not need to worry that the black sword would not be able to withstand the power of the sword energy, but he did not expect that the sword energy after being blessed by the sword would be even more amazing. Jian was shocked. He was at the peak of his late-stage pill formation, and he actually felt fear from a person who was in the early stage of his pill formation. There was no time to deal with it. He forced himself to withstand the backlash generated when he withdrew his move and dodged it. Zhu Yun's sword energy suddenly passed by his side and hit the buildings not far away. Boom! The bricks, stones, and tiles all turned into powder and flew into the sky. Zhu Yun didn't give Jianyi a chance to get close at all, and stabbed out with another sword. The sword energy fired again, and Jianyi could only dodge in panic. He was in an extremely embarrassed state. How could he have the demeanor of the top master in Wanjian Mountain? Zhu Yun rises and uses that move over and over again. Putting the sword in the air, Jianyi was like a living target in his eyes. But Jianyi is not an easy person to deal with. Among the several sword energies, he finally found a good opportunity. However, he was not sure that he would kill with one blow, but he shouted loudly. Come together and help me regain the treasure of Wanjian Mountain. Instead of falling into the risk of death at any time when fighting alone, it is better to invite the others to besiege Zhu Yun together. Zhu Yun's eyes narrowed, and the sword energy was released. Although it was powerful, it was nothing more than that. I am only good at this trick. If it was just one person, he could still gain the upper hand with the power of this black sword. Even if he kills Jianyi, it is no problem. But what about 2 of swords, 3 of swords, or even 4 of swords and 5 of swords? More than 20 pill forming periods. Black Sword's fighting spirit could not control Zhu Yun. The reason why Zhu Yun stayed was actually just to try out the bonuses of these sword moves. Now that the goal has been achieved, it is natural to go first. Seeing the others swarming over, Zhu Yun took it out in his arms, and when he took action again, he already had more than 10 talismans. Sent to you. More than 10 talismans were thrown out, and the sky suddenly changed dramatically. Boom! Thunder clouds appeared, and more than 10 thunder snakes arrived in an instant, blasting between Zhu Yun and these elders. Zhu Yun did not choose to kill them, but chose to stop them. He was not sure that more than 10 thunderbolts would hit everybody in the pill-forming stage. Instead, he used these thunderbolts to form a thunder wall, which could buy him more opportunities. Then, Zhu Yun shook off his sleeves and robe, and a bit of golden light flew out and landed, turning into a flying boat. This is 15's flying boat. Someone suddenly shouted, but after the words fell, Zhu Yun had already left in the boat. By the time the thunder clouds dispersed, they were already half a mile away. No matter how much they try to chase, it's just in vain. Damn it, 15. Why is your flying boat with that kid? Xianxia roared crazily, and murderous intent suddenly rushed towards Jian 15. In his opinion, if Zhu Yun didn't have a flying boat, they wouldn't be able to catch him if they pursued him. When his spiritual power is exhausted, it will be his physical death. But with the flying boat, it's completely different. The spiritual stones are endless and the flying boats are endless. Not to mention, on the flying boat, spiritual power can be restored. Xianxia gritted his teeth and said, "Brother Yi, I lent my flying boat to the mountain owner." Destiny. Xianxia suddenly came to his senses, he knew this. It's just that he forgot a lot of news about Jian Tianming for a while. The murderous intention subsided, Jian San said in a deep voice, "Brother Yi, it seems that the disappearance of the mountain master must be related to that boy. First brother, second brother, third brother." Xianxia was said anxiously, "Nothing has happened over at the Soul Hall. God, the mountain master's soul card is still in good condition." Jian Yi's expression was gloomy, he believed what Jian 15 said. But so what if you don't believe it? The Soul Hall is on Wanjian Mountain. But Wanjianshan has been taken out by Zhu Yun refining. There is no proof. Even their soul cards are on it. Brother Yi, what should we do now? Jian took a deep breath. Wanjian Mountain. Even the mountain gate is gone. If this spreads out, it will probably be the biggest joke in the entire Yazhu. Once upon a time. For the sake of face, they didn't know that their ancestor had been knocked off his sword by a hammer since Sword 5 and could never pull it out again. You can see how hard it was to hide it? But now, even the iconic mountain is gone. Stay here for now. After all, there is a way out here. Jianyi turned around and looked at the location of the forbidden area. If Zhu Yun comes back to fight again, even if they are defeated, they can still go to Chezhu through the teleportation array. That's all it can do. Jian sighed. Everyone was speechless, surrounded by an inexplicable atmosphere. Who would have thought? How could the heroic Wanjianshan end up in such a situation? I have to say that the original foundation building disciples left at the right time. Otherwise, they will definitely suffer countless casualties, and even those who survive will probably have to face the anger of a group of people in the Dan formation stage who may burst out at any time. In fact, there are very few foundation building periods left in the sky that can survive. After struggling for a long time, they finally settled down. Everyone knows that Wanjianshan is employing people, maybe. If they stay here, will they have the opportunity to become core disciples? At the same time, when Zhu Yun drew his sword just now, there were many casualties. For them, there was less competition. These are elite disciples from various major sections. They are extremely thoughtful and can see the essence of the matter clearly after only a moment. At the same time, Zhu Feng also came back in a hurry. He thinks differently than everyone else. He had taken a fancy to those previous foundation building periods that had fallen down and were half dead. In his eyes, they are all living and fresh spiritual power. Wealth is sought in danger, not to mention that Xianxia still doesn't know his true identity. Master, I am willing to do my best to dispose of the body. Zhu Feng took the initiative to invite Xianxia. Go ahead. Xianxia was upset, but seeing Zhu Feng like this, he felt a little relieved. Compared to the other foundation establishment stagers who stood aside waiting for orders, Zhu Feng also won the favor of many core formation stagers. Is this little kid your new disciple? Jianyi asked. Yes, brother Yi. Jianyi was very respectful, sighed and said, originally, I promised him that I would let him enter the sword pool when he came back. Unfortunately, the sword was taken away and the sword pool was gone. Zhu Feng couldn't help but pricked up his ears when he heard Xianxia being mentioned again. After we settle down, we will definitely find that kid. And if we find him, we will definitely be able to find out the news about Tianming. Jianyi's eyes flickered. The speaker has no intention, but the listener does. Zhu Feng secretly remembered it. That sword pool is actually inside the giant sword? It seems that when they go to find someone, I have to find a way to keep up. But before that, we have to quickly improve our realm. When the giant sword first changed, Zhu Feng stayed away from the place under Jianyi's signal. He did not see that it was Zhu Yun who had refined the giant sword. Otherwise, I don't know what he would think. But in front of him, he focused all his attention on those half-dead foundation building periods. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 368. In fact, Zhu Yun is not far away. He is just confusing everyone. If I want to go to Chezhu, it's a long way. The fastest way is through the teleportation array. However, if he stayed in that formation just now, it would be extremely dangerous. Zhu Yun made the flying boat fly more than 100 miles before it landed quietly. Here is a barren mountain. On the way to Wanjian Mountain, Zhu Yun discovered that the spiritual power surging here was much stronger than that of the other wilderness plains. But for some reason, no one has established a sect here. Zhu Yun fell into a valley. Wanjian Mountain now has no place to live, so they will probably stay in the buildings below for a while in the short term. And he planned to wait until these people relaxed their vigilance a little before touching them, and then pass through the teleportation array to reach Chezhu in one fell swoop. He had guessed why the people in Wanjian Mountain would use the Luo sect for their own use. It must be because they also passed the teleportation array. It just so happens that the teleportation location will be in the volcanic belt. Taking advantage of this time, Zhu Yun can study the black sword carefully. At the same time, there is also the fragment embedded in the hilt of the black sword. When Zhu Yun got the giant sword, he actually felt the vibration in his chest. However, the situation was urgent and he could only suppress it forcefully. There is no one on this mountain, so he can choose to fuse the fragments first. I originally thought about grabbing the giant sword and then grabbing the fragments, but who would have thought that the fragments are actually embedded in the hilt of the sword? Zhu Yun studied it for a while, and then completely let go of the pressure on her chest. In an instant, the day-glazed mirror bloomed with light, directly shining through the clothes and hitting the black sword. The right hand holding the black sword immediately came with a burst of boundless power. Zhu Yun could not control it at all and ran away. Call out. The hilt of the sword was facing Zhu Yun, and it hit his chest. Just when Zhu Yun was wondering why this collision had no power, he saw the scene in front of him shaking. The next moment, it appeared in the Dewu glazed mirror. Boom! As soon as he emerged, Zhu Yun felt his feet shaking. He was in a cave, and he actually had the illusion that the cave would collapse. Not daring to hesitate, Zuyun hurriedly ran out of the cave, only to realize that the sound came from behind him. He turned around and saw that there was a huge mountain in the void behind the cave. Is this piece of debris has a mountain? Zuyun was stunned for a moment, then looked at the mountain that appeared out of thin air and slowly merged with the cave. In the medicine garden, those fairy medicines were hiding in their own pits, for fear that they would be affected by this shock. As time passed, Zuyun watched the giant mountain slowly stop shaking, and the cave seemed to be embedded in the mountain, completely natural, as if it should be like this. At the same time, the foot of the mountain is connected to the medicine garden. A waterfall, like white silk falling from the sky, flowed through the medicine garden and disappeared out of thin air from behind the alchemy room. Although Zuyun knew that this mountain should originally belong to the immortal mansion, what he saw now made him extremely shocked. After the entire space in the mirror stabilized, he looked at the elixirs with a little fear. The more fragments merged, the more terrifying he felt the mirror. This fairy treasure is probably more than just a space fairy weapon. After slowly calming down, Zuyun looked in the direction of the cave. I saw a step appearing not far from the entrance of the cave. After thinking for a moment, he climbed up the stairs. After walking a few steps, he saw a stone monument. On the stone tablet, there are two big characters engraved. Xianxia. And with this as the boundary, two forked roads appeared. One goes straight up, leading to the top of the mountain. The other one goes around to the back mountain. Zuyun looked up and saw a flash of black light at the top of the mountain, which made him feel familiar. Is this the black sword? He suddenly remembered that when the fragments merged, the black sword crashed into his chest together with the fragments. So, the black sword also entered the mirror? Thinking of this, Zuyun chose to walk to the top of the mountain. The further up he went, the more shocked he became. Originally, when viewed from the bottom of the mountain, there was nothing strange about the mountain. It was almost the same as the Lingshan mountain where he was in the outside world. But at this moment, sword light flashed faintly in the surrounding ground. And when he released his spiritual consciousness to investigate, he found nothing. With doubts in his heart, Zuyun decided to stop. After a while, I finally discovered something. These sword lights are actually released by various ordinary plants here. Zuyun was greatly surprised and looked towards the top of the mountain again. The black light is still the same as before. Xianxia, it seems, it's not that simple. Zuyun felt that if he had any doubts, it would be better to wait until he got the black sword again and then go down the mountain to ask about the elixirs, rather than staying here and making random guesses. Keep going up. This time he went all the way to the top of the mountain. A black sword. Just like Wanjian mountain, the sword tip is pointed downward and inserted into the mountain. It seems that this sword is also the sword of the owner of the glazed mirror. No wonder it is so mysterious, it has become so big, and it has merged with the fragments. Zuyun stepped forward and held the black sword. Buzz. With a clear cry, he pulled out the black sword. It was extremely easy, without using any force, it was more like the black sword came out by itself. Zuyun danced a few times and felt something was wrong. Before the fragments merged, although he could use the sword, he still felt a little strange. Even the terrifying black light required him to control his mind and not be affected. But at this time, he felt that the sword seemed to belong to him and had been with him for countless years. It must be related to the Dao glass mirror. Zuyun nodded slightly, left a spiritual consciousness on the sword, and inserted the sword back. Then, his mind moved. The black sword flew up on its own and landed in his palm. Not bad. Zuyun nodded slightly, very satisfied, and then turned back down the mountain and decided to go to another road to have a look. After a cup of tea, Zuyun had already followed that road and turned behind the mountain. In front of him was a pond surrounded by various long swords. There was also a stone tablet beside the pond. Sword pond. A pond named after a sword? Is it for raising swords? Zuyun felt that these two words were somewhat familiar, but after thinking about it, he couldn't think of where he had heard them. Anyway, it was either Sun Qiniang or Wanjianren. But what's the use of this sword pond? Zuyun didn't dare to try it rashly. He transformed himself into a metal spirit and flew directly to the bottom of the medicine garden. The waterfall beside the medicine garden was gurgling, the mist was suspended, and the breath was refreshing. Zuyun stood by and asked the spiritual medicines one by one about the questions he had written down. After half an hour, Zuyun finally understood something about Xianxia. According to them, Xianxia was where the master practiced swordsmanship. The whole mountain was. The black sword was also the sword that the master had used. They didn't know what he used later. Because they had never left Daoliulijing with the master. They only knew that every time the master finished practicing swordsmanship, he would go to the sword pond to soak. Zuyun looked strange, looking at such a mysterious sword pool. Is it a bathhouse? After throwing this thought out of his mind, Zuyun turned back into human form. Concentrating his mind and calming his breath, he felt the spiritual consciousness he left on the black sword. Sword! He shouted, and the black sword flew over the mountain out of thin air and landed in Zuyun's palm. After looking carefully again, he found that the hilt of the sword was hollow. After a slight pause, Zuyun smiled. Those people used to live on the sword. It must be their residence, right? After casually performing a set of sword control techniques, Zuyun hung the sword on his waist, and then he remembered that he had merged another piece of fragment, and perhaps he could get more information from the green jade slip. Thinking of this, he strode towards the cave. After a few steps, he had already put the jade slip on his forehead. A green light flashed, and there was indeed a strange message in his mind. Zuyun was overjoyed when he saw the 4 characters that appeared in the purple palace. Wuji sword technique. He was worried that his sword moves were too bad, and only one sword energy release move could be used. This was like a pillow delivered to him when he was sleeping. As these 4 characters suddenly turned into light spots in the purple palace and dispersed, the figures dancing with swords quickly appeared. Each of the little people had a sword move in his hand. Or stabbing, slashing, chopping, or sweeping. Zuyun was immersed in the sight and couldn't help himself. It wasn't until he suddenly came to his senses that he realized that he didn't seem to remember any sword moves in his mind at all. Zuyun stared blankly at the jade slip in his hand, muttering, "Strange, this so-called sword technique, is it for fun?" You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzhuan Xianxia. Chapter 369. Zuyun was at least a cultivator in the early stage of Jindan. Even when he was at a lower level, he had never encountered such a thing. But at this moment, the sword techniques he had practiced in his mind, not to mention every move, even the gestures were blank. From beginning to end, he only remembered the name, Wuji sword technique. In my opinion, it's more appropriate to call it Wujianju. Zuyun curled his lips, looked at the black sword in his hand, walked out of the cave, threw it casually, and the black sword returned to the sword mountain. This time, the harvest was not small. But Zuyun couldn't be happy at all, the difference from his expectations was too big. However, it didn't affect the rescue of Sun Suanhua. The reason why he couldn't rescue before was that the people in Wanjian Mountain were all in Liwo sect. And now, meeting these Jindan stage in Wanjian Mountain means that there is no one there. Zuyun flashed away from Daoliuli Mirror, detoured to the north, and then rushed to Wanjian Mountain. It was already late at night when he walked more than 10 miles away from Wanjian Mountain. This place was also a hilly area. The mountains were not high, but they were continuous and there were many low valleys. Zuyun did not dare to use the thunder escape technique again, because he found that the thunder escape technique was almost silent during the day. But in the dark, when he used the escape technique again, a very weak purple electric light would flash, which was particularly conspicuous. The closer you are, the easier it is to be discovered. It was for this reason that Zuyun decided to stay here and wait until dawn to secretly use the teleportation array. Just as he was about to enter the Daoliuli mirror to practice for a while, a formation pattern suddenly flashed not far away. Zuyun was slightly stunned. He only saw this formation pattern with the corner of his eye, but he felt it was particularly familiar. Why is someone setting up an array here? Thinking of this, he silently recited the earth escape technique, drilled into the ground, and quickly escaped over there. Soon, he escaped outside the formation and stopped. A series of strange laughters reached his ears. But that was all. Zuyun was afraid that he would be discovered if he used his spiritual sense to explore, so he quietly emerged from the ground. Then he used the breaking void spirit eye technique. It would be fine if he didn't look at it, but when he saw it, he was immediately surprised. 9 transformations 9 suns formation. The third level of the breaking void spirit eye technique actually saw all the hidden formation patterns. As the formation that Zuyun was most familiar with, he could recognize it at a glance. Even some flaws in this formation were seen clearly. Master's ability is more than that, but who else can set up this formation besides Master? He frowned and decided to enter the formation to find out. It was also the 9 transformations 9 suns formation, but this formation was not set up by him. He still needed some time to enter it safely. Coming out of the soil, Zuyun pushed his right hand, and the black sword appeared in his palm out of thin air. Afterwards, he saw the flaw of the formation through the Pakuling Jingju, and walked in with many twists and turns. But as soon as he entered the formation, a huge and extremely foul smell mixed with cold and eerie demonic energy rushed towards him, and Zuyun's face suddenly changed. The entire formation was shrouded in black demonic energy, but with the Pakuling Jingju, although he couldn't see through it at a glance, he also saw the outline of a sitting cross-legged figure from it. He. Another sinister laugh came. Compared with the previous one, the sound became a little louder. Obviously, the man didn't find Zuyun entering the formation. Perhaps, he didn't believe that anyone would find him. Zuyun held his breath, but he could also feel that the figure in the black air seemed to be just a child of no more than 10 years old. Could it be that he was the disciple accepted by the master? Or, Tang Zhuyang's disciple? Otherwise, there is no way to explain why he would set up the 9 transformations 9 yang formation. Zuyun could never have imagined that the black air was absorbing the spiritual power and vitality of those half-dead foundation building cultivators. In the daytime, he volunteered to deal with those foundation building cultivators with this idea in mind. As long as they are not dead, they can be used by him. In order to avoid being discovered by the Jindan cultivators of Wanjian Mountain, he deliberately found this place and laid out the 9 transformations and 9 suns formation. Although his 9 transformations and 9 suns formation was learned by himself from the formation diagram, he was taught carefully by Sun Suanhua, and Zhu Feng also studied hard, so this formation was laid out in a proper manner. At least, in Zhu Yun's opinion, this formation is countless times stronger than when he first learned it. If he didn't have the time difference of the Daoglazed mirror, he would not be able to reach this level. At this time, Zhu Feng is already close to the middle stage of foundation building. Perhaps, after absorbing the spiritual power and vitality of all the cultivators here, he can break through in one fell swoop. The magic power is so fast. But the faster you practice magic skills, the greater the responsibility you have to pay. At the beginning, Mo11 did not dare to practice such magic skills casually, but he did not expect that Zhu Feng would benefit from it in the end. Zuyun had never really dealt with magic cultivators. The only one he had more contact with was Mengwei. So he had no prejudice against magic cultivators. The other one was Mo11, but at that time, Mo11 was directly injured by him on the island, and there was almost no communication. There was only false flattery and concealment from each other. At this time, he stopped in the black air for a long time, and finally saw what Zhu Feng was doing. He put his palm on the chest of a person, and after a moment, he turned into a withered corpse. And every time he finished absorbing, Zhu Feng would hear a weird laugh. "Beast, you actually use living people to practice. Die." Zuyun felt the blood surging in his brain, and with a roar, he chopped down with the black sword in his hand. However, before the black air in front of him broke, a little man holding a sword flashed in front of Zuyun's eyes, and his movements were exactly the same as his. His mind condensed slightly. Isn't this one of the moves that appeared when he learned the Wuji sword art? But didn't I forget it? Why did I remember it when I used the sword? In this days, Zuyun didn't use the sword energy that he was going to use. Zhu Feng, who was startled, realized that someone had sneaked into the 9 transformations and 9 Yang's formation he had set up. The black air was split by Zuyun, and he clearly saw the uninvited guest, who was his half-brother. Seeing him in a daze, Zhu Feng's eyes showed murderous intent. He stretched out his right palm forward, opened his 5 fingers, and a soul-calling banner full of death appeared out of thin air. "I didn't expect you to be here, go to hell." As soon as the voice fell, Yinfen number 4, the entire formation, hummed, as if the resentful soul rushed towards Zuyun with reluctance. These gloomy howls rushed straight into Zuyun's mind, and instantly brought him back to his senses. He opened his eyes and looked, and his face couldn't help but change drastically. "Zhu Feng, it's you." Zuyun sneered, "That's right, Zuyun, I'm not dead, are you happy?" As he said, he kept shaking the soul-calling banner with his right hand, and pinched the formation formula with his left hand to control the 9 turns 9 yang formation. The formation pattern kept flashing, and as soon as 9 round suns appeared in the sky, they smashed down on Zuyun's head. Zuyun's breaking void spirit eye formula directly saw through Zhu Feng's every move. These ghost power and death energy could not cause any substantial damage to him at all. On the contrary, the 9 suns could affect him a little. But that was all. He showed disdain, stuck the black sword into the ground, and rushed over with the Changsheng Ju footwork. Although the thunder escape Ju is useful, it only works far away and not near. Zuyun can only control the direction for the time being, not the distance. At the moment, the Changsheng Ju is the most suitable. The reason why Zuyun did not use the sword was that he was afraid that when he used the sword, those villains would appear in front of him again, thus distracting him. But he did not expect that the black sword was put aside by him, which made Zhu Feng's eyes light up. He saw with his own eyes that someone refined the 10,000 swords mountain. When refining, the color of the giant sword was exactly the same as Zuyun's sword. Unexpectedly, it was so easy to get it. "Zuyun, you waste, let me show you how powerful I am." Seeing Zuyun rushing forward, Zhu Feng's formations kept changing. He did not realize that Zuyun's realm had changed. The ground moved, and although the distance was only more than 10 steps, it prevented Zuyun from getting close quickly. At the same time, he also completely exposed Zuyun to the attack range of the 9 round suns. However, Zhu Feng had no idea that Zuyun was much more familiar with the 9 transformations and 9 suns formation than he was. Although he delayed Zuyun for a few breaths. But after that, Zuyun had already appeared in front of him. At the same time, Zuyun grabbed Zhu Feng's collar with one hand, and the huge energy of the Jindan stage instantly locked onto Zhu Feng. He then said faintly, "Waste? You call me a Jindan stage waste? I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills." Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 370. The Knot, the Dan period. Suddenly, Zhu Feng was dumbfounded. His face was full of disbelief, and he said, "How could you have reached the elixir formation stage? You are just a waste with 5 spiritual roots." At the end of the sentence, Zhu Feng almost roared. Zhu Yun sneered, as if this had become Zhu Feng's obsession, so he ignored it and asked directly, "Where did you learn this 9 turns and 9 yang formation?" Zhu Feng laughed wildly, and then said with a ferocious face, "You want to know? I won't tell you." "Don't tell me." Zhu Yun snorted and threw Zhu Feng heavily to the ground. Under his strong pressure, Zhu Feng could not get up at all. "Zhu Yun, if you have the guts, kill me. Don't think that because you are in my realm, I will be afraid of you." "I never said you would be afraid of me," Zhu Yun said calmly. "Are you possessed by a demon? I think it would be easier to destroy your cultivation than to kill you." This is true. If he really wanted to kill Zhu Feng, Zhu Yun really couldn't do it. At that time, he was on the sea, and he let it go without taking any action himself. Unexpectedly, Zhu Feng survived by some unknown luck and reached the early stage of foundation building. After all, he is his half-brother, and, counting his age, he is only more than 10 years old at this time. "Then you might as well kill me." Zhu Feng's pupils shrank. He really couldn't bear to have his cultivation destroyed. This is how many lives he spent on the sea to fill it out. Moreover, what will he do after losing his cultivation? For a moment, Zhu Feng was a little scared. This scene was seen by Zhu Yun's void-breaking spiritual eye technique, and he knew he had caught Zhu Feng's weakness. "Answer some of my questions and I'll let you live. What do you think?" He raised his brows and his tone became gentler. "Just because in comparison, he cares more about Sun Suanhua. I learned from my master," Zhu Feng said through gritted teeth. Zhu Yun kept observing Zhu Feng's expression and found that he was not lying. "Tang Zhu Yang taught you?" Zhu Feng grinned, "It's Sun Suanhua." "What?" Zhu Yun's expression suddenly froze, and he asked in a deep voice, "Where is he?" "Ha ha ha, Zhu Yun, beg me. If you beg me, I will tell you." Zhu Feng chuckled. Seeing Zhu Yun's expression, he felt happy for no reason. "I can guess it even if you don't tell me." Zhu Yun naturally would not let Zhu Feng succeed, and said coldly, "You are in Luo sect, right?" Zhu Feng suddenly changed his expression and blurted out, "How do you know?" "Bless the wind." Zhu Yun roared and said, "I have known for a long time that my master is in Luo sect, but I am temporarily unable to rescue him. Moreover, I also know that he was trapped there by the people of Wanjian Mountain. Do you think I don't know about these little tricks you did in front of me? Tell me, why do you call him master?" Po Su Ling Jingju saw that he was not lying, which meant that Sun Suanhua really accepted him as his disciple. How is this possible? Zhu Yun couldn't accept it. He knew that Sun Suanhua was a person. Although he was usually not upright, it was absolutely impossible to accept a disciple of Zhu Feng's character. Ha ha ha. The more unhappy Zhu Feng became when he saw Zhu Yun, he felt better and sneered, "I said I was Zhu Yun's younger brother, and that old guy Sun Suanhua couldn't wait to accept me as his apprentice. Moreover, he also took the initiative to teach me 9. Not only that, he also taught me the 6 skills of turning around the 9 yang formation, including drawing talismans, refining alchemy, and refining weapons. It's a pity that I didn't trick him into using the earth fire. Still a waste. Disrespect the teacher, slap your mouth." Zhu Yun was furious and slapped him in the air. Zhu Feng's face immediately showed a bright red palm print. This is because Zhu Yun forcibly restrained himself, otherwise at his level of pill formation, Zhu Feng would have been beaten to pulp by Zhu Yun. Teacher's way? What is teacher's way? Those who cultivate immortality should renounce their emotions and desires. I have long seen through that people only use each other. no matter they are mortals or monks. Zhu Feng didn't take it seriously, and was full of ridicule. Zhu Yun's face was gloomy, and he couldn't believe that these were words that a child in his early 10 years could say. Haha, Zhu Feng didn't care what Zhu Yun was thinking at all, and said to himself, loyalty in any relationship is only because betrayal is not enough. Zhu Yun, just like now, you and I are dripping with Zhu Rong blood. We are brothers, but have you ever helped me? Just because you look down on me and think I can't help you in your cultivation, so even if you are successful in cultivating yourself, you have never even looked at me. Zhu Yun was dumbfounded. He really didn't go to see Zhu Feng, just because he didn't agree with Zhu Rong's ideas at that time. Even though he stayed on the barren rock mountain for several years, he had been concentrating on cultivation. Later, Zhu Feng was born and saw that the family was enjoying themselves happily, so he didn't bother him anymore. Unexpectedly, Zhu Feng understood it this way. It's true, the world has its way with people, and the way of heaven has its way with people. Zhu Feng continued, the same is true for Zhu Rong. You have become an immortal, and you have done the work of honoring your ancestors. Zhu Rong says good things about you in front of me every day, but he doesn't let me go to become an immortal. He wants to keep me in that broken mountain village. I will be immortal for the rest of my life, and I will support him till the end of his life. Isn't this what he wants to do to take advantage of me? Big Dog can exchange training resources for Lingjian sect, so he stayed in Lingjian section, but you and Ergu are both useless and have no use value, so they were abandoned by the sect. But it's ironic that you and Ergu were able to return to Lingjian sect in the end. Even Sun Qiniang, who has been my master for a few days. Why did she accept me as her disciple? Hearing Zhu Feng's words, Zhu Yun was extremely shocked, but understanding it from another perspective, he had to say that it made sense. Especially that sentence, loyalty is nothing more than betrayal without enough chips. Sun Suanhua once told him that if one day he competes with him for a supreme treasure, he hopes Zhu Yun will not hold back and kill him. But can I really do it? Zhu Yun felt that unless Sun Suanhua really had to kill him, he would definitely spare Sun Suanhua's life. It is unclear whether his cultivation will be abolished or not. Suddenly, Zhu Yun felt extremely confused in his mind, and his heart became even more anxious. Just as Zhu Feng was in front of him at this moment, his first thought was not to kill Zhu Feng. Whether he is a brother whose blood is thicker than water, or he cannot threaten him at all. Why? He decided to listen to Zhu Feng's heresy again. Sun Qiniang wants to win your favor through me. As soon as these words came out, Zhu Yun suddenly looked confused, not knowing what he meant. The relationship between himself and Sun Qiniang can be regarded as twists and turns. Gratitude, resentment, love, and hatred, except for the word love, are simply intertwined and inseparable. But it has to be said that Sun Qiniang can now be someone Zhu Yun completely trusts. He frowned and asked, what do you mean? Ha ha ha, Zhu Yun, you are not only a waste, but also a fool. Zhu Feng clapped his hands and laughed, Sun Qiniang wants to be my sister-in-law, can't you tell? What? Suddenly, Zhu Yun's face was full of disbelief and he exclaimed. Sun Qiniang, you actually have thoughts about me? Impossible. No wonder, I finally understand, Zhu Yun, it turns out that you are a truly heartless person. Zhu Feng sneered and said, I saw then that Sun Qiniang treats you differently from others, but you still don't know it after all these years. It's really difficult for my master, who has good intentions. It's a pity that Luo Hua intentional, Lu Shui is not heartless, he simply only knows how to cultivate immortality and has given up on the word love. Zhu Yun was silent for a long time, and the faces of Sun Qiniang and Mengwei appeared in his mind at the same time, constantly circling back and forth in his mind. Compared to Sun Qiniang, Mengwei was more interested in him, and he knew it. I am not heartless. It's just that in his opinion, Taoist companions have no meaning. His talents are not obvious, but he is devoted to the Tao. If we are really close friends and can help each other, why would we need to add a layer of Taoist companionship? But at this time, Zhu Feng's words made him extremely confused. After a few breaths, Zhu Yunqiang calmed down his mind and said, "Are you done? Tell me after you're done, is Sun Suanhua still in Chuzhu?" After 3 years of traveling to the sea area, Zhu Feng's experience was much more mature than that of children of the same age. After all, he not only tricked and killed mortals, but also killed many casual cultivators. Seeing Zhu Yun quickly come to his senses and not being affected by him, he secretly praised in his heart. Rolling his eyes, he said, Jian accepted a female apprentice from Li Huo section later. The female apprentice disappeared, and Sun Suanhua also disappeared. According to Jian there was evil spirit in Li Huo sect. And there is an explosion of monsters in Chuzhu. It is possible that Sun Suanhua has been eaten by the monsters. Suddenly, Zhu Yun's face suddenly turned pale. At this time, there was a slight vibration under his feet. He carefully investigated and found that the source of the earthquake was extremely far away. And the sky also lit up slightly.